As you move around, just be mindful that there is a hole in the ground for the tree, so we don't want anybody falling. If you're not speaking, can you please join the crowd on the other side? If you are speaking, please come behind the podium.
All right, let's huddle up over here.
We are, absolutely. Jenny Jacqueline. Nice to meet you. Very nice to meet you. Is the rumor I heard true that since the internet said that, I will ignore that. My daughter sent me a text. She's like, they said they're going to replace smoking. I'm like, I'm going to ask.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah. Beautiful day.
I know.
Hey, Mayor. How are you? Good to see you. The tree ladies come to town.
I told her I talked to you about this and you asked me if I could.
I might have them blocked it out because it was bigger than I thought.
I know. Yeah, so, but, you know, we first started talking about this 6 years ago. What's that let us show?
Thanks. That's not going to work too well.
Yeah, thank you.
Good? Feel good?
I'm doing great. How was it?
Good. Very restful.
You're good to go.
Very restful.
What'd you say?
Haven't slept that much in a long time.
Do you want to organize them first?
You will. I did not do that.
Saw a little bit of sentiment of what you said.
Go ahead. I was there north of that. I was trying to be far and everything.
That's where my family was.
All right, everybody. I'm hoping the sound of my voice will call my fellow speakers over to the podium.
Great.
How's everyone feeling today?
Great.
Oh, come on now. You can do better than that. How's everyone feeling today? That's right. I'm feeling it today. I got to tell you, because here's this thing. Tree equity is not about trees. It's about people. It's about what trees can do for people, for our health, for our wealth, for well-being, for economic opportunity, and for what it feels like to come together and do this work of bringing more trees to our communities, especially where they're needed the most. And what happens when we do that work together for building community and the power of the pack, the power of when diverse people and organizations come together and everybody brings their superpower to the table, we can do incredible things, including creating tree equity across the city of Detroit and across every city in America. That's what this is about. So I'm really excited. I'm just going to do a quick why, what, and who to warm this event up, and then you're going to hear from the really important people behind me. I'm Jad Daly. I'm the president and CEO of American Forest, and we are incredibly proud to be part of this Detroit Tree Equity Partnership with these amazing organizations and leaders standing behind me and other folks who are here in the crowd today. And look, Detroit's not new to this work of creating equitable tree cover. In fact, Detroit has been a long-standing leader. Our organization had the pleasure of partnering with the City of Detroit and Greening of Detroit and other leaders here in the city starting back in 2016 to bring together an incredibly inclusive partnership to identify where Detroit most urgently needs more trees, and then to rally an unprecedented effort, a real model for the country of how to do this together. Very recently, Detroit took these lessons learned, it lifted it up for the nation and the world by making one of the first pledges to the Trillion Trees movement, something called 1T.org, to make sure that when we think about more trees in America and around the world, even 1 trillion of them, that we understand it's not just about numbers, because not all trees are created equal. The trees here in our cities are the hardest working trees. They do so much for our communities. And so Detroit is taking its tree equity leadership, and it's made it part of the national and global Trillion Trees movement. So why? Yeah. And a huge thanks to Mayor Duggan and his staff for making that happen. So why are trees so important today? What's the urgency? Look, climate change, the greatest health threat from climate change is extreme heat. And trees are our #1 defense against extreme heat. They're also powerful defense against air pollution. They're even important for our mental health. So as one of the community members who joined us here today said, this is about our children. This is about our children having the kind of environment to grow up in where they can be everything that they want and deserve to be. But it's about more than health. It's about wealth and opportunity. Our organization did a study, found we can create 25.7 jobs per $1 million that we invest in this work. And this partnership seeks to invest $30 million in this work. So we're really, really excited about everything that we can do for the health and the wealth and the economic opportunity here in Detroit. So the thing about it is I talked about superpowers, and there are a lot of them that you're going to hear about from these wonderful speakers today. But part of it, too, is making sure that we're working in the right places. We're being strategic. Our organization created something called Tree Equity Score, where we mapped tree cover in every urban neighborhood in America, and then we cross-referenced it with factors like income and race and age and health status and urban heat island to make sure that we're really focusing our energies and our resources in the neighborhoods that need it the most. And that's one of the tools that we're going to put to work through this partnership here in Detroit. And so you're going to hear about some of the other resources that we're going to bring to the table, financial and organizational, to make this happen. So let me talk a little bit about some of these folks and get going and let you hear from some of our partners in this Detroit Tree Equity Partnership. Mayor Mike Duggan, someone who needs no introduction to this group, a national leader for what he's done for Detroit in every possible respect, including its natural assets. Private companies and foundations that have been leaders in this work. And you're going to hear from Jerry Norcia of DTE Energy, which has been an anchor partner in pulling this whole Detroit Tree Equity Partnership together. But also other companies, Carhartt. We're fortunate to have Mark Valade, the CEO of Carhartt, with us today. And philanthropies. The Herb Foundation has been an anchor partner in getting this Detroit Tree Equity Partnership going as well. I often say that the anchor for these efforts at the ground level are community-based organizations like the Greening of Detroit. And I'm really excited. In a moment, I'll be introducing Lionel Bradford, from the leader of Greening of Detroit, which has, I really think, provided a national model for what a community-based urban forestry group can do to drive efforts like this in partnership with city leaders. And then lastly, governments. Governments can help us take this work to scale. They can put resources into these efforts that no one has locally. And boy, are we so lucky to have with us here U.S. Senator Debbie Stabenow, who I can't wait to tell you about all the amazing things she's done to supercharge this and USDA Undersecretary Homer Wilkes, who is leading these efforts from the very, very top of the U.S. Department of Agriculture. But lastly, I want to make sure to give a shout out to the agency staff for the U.S. Forest Service with the Michigan Department of Natural Resources, who are in efforts here in Detroit and ones like this around the state and around the country every single day, bringing really powerful technical expertise to the table as well. Okay, so like I said, let me get out of the way and let you hear from these amazing folks that we have here assembled here today. And we're going to start with Mayor Mike Duggan, who, as I said, is a national and even globally renowned leader for the way he has helped Detroit to reinvent itself like never before. And it really has covered every possible aspect, from workforce efforts, like the Skills for Life program, all the way to natural infrastructure efforts like this, and even planting 2 million daffodils across the city. Someone who really understands that the small things really matter in the health and well-being of a city. So we're incredibly excited to partner with the City of Detroit and with Mayor Duggan in this Detroit Tree Equity Partnership, and I'd like to turn it over to him now. Thanks.
All right.
75,000 trees in Detroit in the next 5 years. How does that sound? We are spending a lot of time in this administration talking about going from blight to beauty. We're spending a lot more time talking about beauty. People laughed at me when I started using that term 18 months ago, but the trees are a great example. If you had come with me to any neighborhood meeting in this city 5 years ago, the neighbors wanted to talk about trees. They wanted to talk about the dead tree in front of their house that they were afraid was going to fall on the house, fall on the car, fall on the children. And the city had neglected the maintenance for so long that we had dead trees, 10,000 across the city, that were a danger. That was what was on Detroiters' minds. In the last 5 years, Brad Dick and the outstanding team at the General Services Department has gotten rid of the vast majority of those trees. And in the last year, the conversation has changed about we don't have enough trees. And you've had folks like Greening of Detroit and Senator Debbie Stabenow that for years have been pushing the planting of trees every day, and they made a lot of progress. But their efforts didn't always get as much attention as they deserve. But as we're thinking about this, a few months ago, Jerry Norcia calls, the great CEO of DTE. He says, we're going to lead an effort, raise $30 million, plant 75,000 trees. How does that sound? I said, Jerry, just a minute. Because if the trees get planted in Palmer Park and Rouge Park, they have environmental benefits and they can get done quickly. But that wouldn't be the maximum benefit. I want trees to go where there's the most concrete. The freeway service drives in this city are ugly. You go to a place like Woodward between 6 and 8 with all those lanes of traffic. There's a place where trees could help, but I tell you where I really care about it. There are more than 300 scrap yards and auto salvage yards in this city, basically covered by somebody's used garage doors stacked together as a fence. And they are blights on this city. And here's the thing about it. Those areas tend to be the poorest areas of our city. That's where those scrap yards went. That's where those auto yards went. So, Jerry, what would really be great is if you targeted the truck parking lots, the scrap lots, took those 300 and screened them. And he said, well, what would you want us to do? And I said, look out your window. There is no more beautifully screened piece of property in this city by trees than DTE headquarters. If you haven't been on that Grand River, it's spectacular. I said, Jerry, what would happen if the ugliest sites in the city were screened as beautiful as DTE? And so it's going to be a more complicated process to target these areas and figure out where we have enough room, and maybe have to get some private property owners to go along. But can you imagine what this city would look like if you managed to do two things at once? Planted 75,000 trees for the environment, but also created sites of beauty where people have been staring at scrapyards. Could we do those things together? And when I said it to Jerry and the team, he says, that's great. We're going to do it because this is what DTE has meant. They deeply believe in what we're doing. And so for everybody here who's a part of this, for all the neighbors who've been complaining to me about the eyesores in their neighborhood over the next 4 or 5 years, we're going to see site after site go from blight to beauty. And I just want to say thank you to everybody who's making it possible.
Thank you so much, Mayor Duggan. And I think the mayor would agree that amazing transformational efforts like the mayor described are a lot easier when you have corporate leaders like Jerry Norcia and DTE that seek not only to be the best in the world, but the best for the world that this company can be. And I just can't underscore enough the absolutely central role that DTE Energy has played in launching the Detroit Tree Equity Partnership, really been the Pied Piper for this entire effort, and we're so grateful for it. And DTE really understands that it's not just about serving its customers, but its customers are part of a community. And this is an effort that's going to promote well-being across this entire community. We need force multipliers, and DTE Energy has really been that in this partnership. So I'm very excited to introduce the CEO, Jerry Norcia.
Well, thank you and good morning, everybody. And what a beautiful day to be planting trees. We could have had a lot worse than this in Michigan. Could have been snowing today, and it's not. So it's very conducive to starting this program to plant 75,000 trees over the next 5 years. And as you've heard, at DTE Energy, we not only strive to be best in the world at what we do, but also best for the world. And best for the world, it means how do we do it? And this is part of how we do things, is to really invest in the communities where we live and serve. Many of us work and live in Detroit that work for DTE Energy, and so this is a community that we care deeply about. We've been here since 1849 and plan to be here many centuries more, we hope. And when this idea was first brought to me by one of our environmental leaders at DTE Energy, Christy Wicke, who's here this morning, and we started talking about the opportunity to invest in Detroit and create more tree cover, and we saw the maps that showed the tree inequities that existed in Detroit. That's where we all got inspired by this story to really fundamentally start to reshape the future of Detroit from a beauty perspective, from an environmental perspective, to invest heavily in the city of Detroit with tree cover. And tree cover, as you've heard, does more than a few things. It makes the city more beautiful, more attractive so that people want to live in the city. It also creates cooling, and it also creates environmental benefits from a climate change perspective in the sense that it absorbs carbon from the environment. So multiple benefits that we're excited about as a company. And as you know, we are an environmental leader. We are transforming the way we produce power. And one of the ways that we're improving the environment is not only planting trees in Detroit, but we're also securing forestry rights up in northern Michigan to absorb carbon as we look to remove carbon from the environment. So a lot of investment in what I would call planting trees as well as maintaining large forests. So when we started hatching this idea, one of the things I said is we need to go talk to Mayor Duggan. I mean, if we're going to do this in Detroit, I know he'll love this idea. And at the same time, I had been talking to Senator Stabenow, who you'll hear from in a minute, about the idea. And the idea started to formulate and it started to gel. And the input that Mayor Duggan and his administration and his key staff members provided to this initiative has been fundamental. And I think it's going to create great success. We're gonna what DT is known for is execution. We know how to do things and get things done. And the mayor and his team are pointing us in the right direction to go plant these trees where they need to be planted to really make Detroit a much more beautiful place, a more attractive place, and also an environmentally better place for all the residents that live here. So with that, thank you and have a great day.
Thank you so much, Jerry, and thank you for so powerfully capturing this fundamental inequity of tree cover that we have here in Detroit and in cities around the country, and just to see the way that Detroit is taking that head on. And that wouldn't be possible without organizations like the Greening of Detroit. You all know the Greening of Detroit. I want to give you the national perspective. Greening of Detroit's not just a great organization for Detroit. It is a national model for community leadership in getting the details of urban forestry right. creating tree nurseries so that we can have more abundant and lower cost supply of trees for our cities, making sure that we're turning all of this work into the jobs for the people who need them the most, and really paying attention to the forestry details, not just planting a lot more trees, but making sure that we're maintaining them into the future, and also caring for the existing tree cover that we have in our city. Greening of Detroit is doing it all and has done it tirelessly for 33 years, and now under this tremendous leadership from Lionel Bradford, its leader. So Lionel, I'd love to bring you up.
Thank you.
Right.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Lionel Bradford, the President and Executive Director of the Greening of Detroit, and we are very excited about the Detroit Tree Equity Partnership. In fact, we've already started planting. We planted 2 weeks ago, we started planting trees, and we planted 200 already as part of this initiative. The Greening of Detroit has played a major role in Detroit's ecological ecosystem since 1989. We planted over 135,000 trees throughout the city of Detroit with thousands of Detroit residents. We've employed over 2,000 youth every summer. Not every summer, but since we've been doing the program, excuse me. That's a lot. And we've trained about over 1,000 adults for good paying jobs in forestry and landscaping and tree care. And so many of those folks that we've trained are here today. If you look behind you, guys, you raise your hand. And then back here as well. Thank you for your service and good work. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. And what you're looking at is the future, our future, landscapers and tree trimmers. I like to share a quote from Franklin D. Roosevelt. A nation that destroys its soils destroys itself. Forests are the lungs of our land, purifying the air and giving fresh strength to our people. For this partnership, we're offering fresh strength by training individuals who have barriers to employment and finding good jobs for them in urban forestry, arboriculture, and nursery care. The Greening of Detroit will continue to lead planting efforts and manage the 300 or so Detroit conservation participants that come through our program that's looking to be hired through this great initiative. It's more than just about planting trees and changing landscapes, but it's about changing lives. Thank you all to everyone. Thanks to everyone who made this happen. Again, we're very excited to be a part of it, and we look forward to what the future of Detroit looks like when we get this thing going. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Lionel, for your work and the work of your whole organization. You've been a tremendous partner to American Forests and to all the different partners here in the Detroit Tree Equity Partnership. Well, I'm going to have to linger just a smidge longer on this introduction because there's a very important person in our mind here, U.S. Senator Debbie Stabenow. You're very fortunate here in Detroit to have a member of Congress who is the chairwoman of the U.S. Senate Agriculture, Nutrition, and Forestry Committee. That makes her the most important person in the United States Congress on determining things like the kind of investment, federal investment, that we can make in tree equity in Detroit, here and across the country. And if I can use a little Detroit callback to someone I love, Barry Sanders, Senator Stabenow used better moves than Barry Sanders to get this Inflation Reduction Act into the end zone, okay? Under her leadership, we have $5 billion to invest in forests as a climate change solution in the Inflation Reduction Act, alongside all the household energy savings, the health care, all the climate solutions in that legislation, the biggest climate bill in history and the biggest bill in history for so many more things that are going to make lives better here in America. And one of the most amazing accomplishments is that this includes $1.5 billion to invest in creating equitable tree cover in our communities. Dollars that can come to help take this work in Detroit to an entirely different level of speed and success. And so we couldn't be more thrilled to have Senator Stabenow here to speak to you today.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. Well, thank you so much, Jed. And, American Forest is a wonderful partner in D.C., so thank you for all the advocacy and work, not only here with us, but across the country. It is really, really important. And let me say, it's so fun working with the mayor and his vision on so many different things. I remember coming in as chair of the Senate Agriculture, Nutrition, and Forestry Committee in 2011, when we were really in the midst of let's move on Detroit. We're rebuild, we invest. What are we going to do in Detroit? And I thought, well, what can I do from a traditionally rural committee? And so we started looking at a number of things. Eastern Market. We talked to the mayor, the oldest continuously running farmers market in the country. The jobs there, the people there, the jobs to support those efforts. Urban farmers. We are the leaders, by the way, in urban agriculture. I'm not just saying this because I'm bragging about Detroit. I'm saying I go around the country. People say, why are you talking to us? The leaders are in Detroit. And so our small farms, our local food systems, all of this, and the leaders in urban planting, urban trees, urban forestry, and greening of Detroit, absolutely are leaders nationally. And so to be able to put in, when I wrote my first farm bill in 2014, an urban tree program for the first time was important to get this started. But now with Jerry Narcia and DTE's vision and the private sector collaborators, this is a whole new level. So thank you, Jerry, because this is just a whole new level of what we're going to be able to do. I do also want to give a shout out. You're going to hear from our Undersecretary for Natural Resources and Environment, Dr. Homer Wilkes, who is no stranger to this area. I was proud to shepherd his nomination through the United States Senate, and he's doing incredible work. So, Dr. Wilkes, thank you, Dr. Wilkes, for everything that you are doing. So, all right. So I look at my friends at Greening of Detroit. We've dug a lot of dirt together over the years, planted a lot of trees, and I think back to, I think it was 6 years ago, the very first meeting on something like this, where Terry Campbell, my regional manager, was a participant, and we've just been cheering this on ever since. But I have to say that this project, as everyone has said, is a lot more than just about planting trees. It's really about investing in people. It's about investing in neighborhoods. It's about the quality of life. It's about the climate crisis. When you look at this, I mean, you plant a tree, it does nothing but suck carbon out of the atmosphere. People often laugh at me when we talked about the climate crisis and the Inflation Reduction Act and why it was so important to do climate smart agriculture and to do forestry. Like, oh, that sounds too easy. Planting a tree, that sounds too easy. Can't really work. It does work. It does work, right? Yes, it does. And the more you do, the more you are taking the carbon out of the atmosphere and addressing the climate crisis while doing so many other things in terms of quality of life for the community. But just think about it for a minute. If you had a biology class, if you think back, don't get a panic attack if you didn't get a good grade. But you learn about the life cycle of a tree. You plant a seed, a sprout appears, it grows into a seedling, then it's a sapling, and if you get a right amount of sunlight, like today, and water, you eventually get a full-grown tree. All the while taking carbon pollution out of the atmosphere. Then that tree produces more seeds, and with those seeds you can grow an entire forest and strengthen a community, which is what we're talking about right here. Well, what you might have not learned in Biology 101 is that this project has a life cycle too, which I think is very, very important. Tree nurseries in Detroit will grow and supply trees, 2,500 this fall, scaling up to 15,000 trees per year. American Forest will buy the trees. Detroit residents will be trained to plant them and care for them, some 200 jobs. And we all will benefit from the quality of life of cooler neighborhoods, cleaner air, less stormwater runoff, and a more beautiful city. So this is important. I'm so pleased we were able to get the funds in the Inflation Reduction Act, including the $1.5 billion for the U.S. Forest Service Urban and Community Forest Program. But this is the kind of project that is a win, 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 win. You're planting a seed, a forest will follow, and a strengthened community and a strengthened city. So congratulations to everyone.
Thank you so much, Senator Stabenow. We are so grateful and fortunate to have your leadership. Okay, one more person I want to introduce, Dr. Homer Wilkes, who is the Undersecretary for Natural Resources and the Environment at the U.S. Department of Agriculture. And two things I want to say in introducing him. The first is that the U.S. Forest Service has been a critical partner in the work here in Detroit for many, many years, helping to bring together partners across the city, helping to do analysis of the city's tree canopy, helping to create climate-informed forest maintenance and planting prescriptions for the city, and then investing in workforce and nursery solutions and so much more. So the U.S. Forest Service is deeply wound into this work here, and now, thanks to the wonderful success that Senator Stabenow just shared, can do even more through its urban and community forestry program. But there's just one catch. Those dollars don't spend themselves, and it's actually not the easiest thing in the world to suddenly scale up from the level that that program has been at to where it needs to go into the future, and to find the right places to invest, the right places like Detroit. And so we're so fortunate to have a leader at USDA. We're so fortunate to have a leader at USDA in Dr. Wilkes, who deeply understands this work. The very first time we met, he brought up to me equity in all things and how we need to drive it from the work that we do in rural areas and who we're partnering with in rural areas, all the way to making sure that urban forestry is a bigger part of how the U.S. government leads on forests than ever before. So we're grateful to have your leadership, Dr. Wilkes, and to have a chance to work with you on this effort.
Thank you, Jed. Yeah, it's unfair that I have to follow these speakers, but we're gonna take a attempt at it. You know, I'm reminded, being from Mississippi, the Baptist church, you know, the preacher has gotten up there and did a good sermon, and people want to come behind them and actually speak. So what I should just do and stay ahead and just say amen to everything I've heard and be gone. But I do want to take a minute to actually make a few remarks. One is that I'm very, very excited to be here today. I mean, this is what I really want. This is my passion. I truly want this to take place. I like what's taking place. And this, you know, let's think about it. We need to celebrate what we want to see more of, and we want to see more of things of this nature. This is outstanding. This is really outstanding. Thank you, Jed, Mayor Duggan, Senator Stabenow. Thank you. We cannot say thank you enough. Let's give her another hand, really. Let's give her a hand. Mr. Bradford? Yes. Ms. Norcia. You heard what everybody came to the table and said. Everybody's bringing something to the table. You know, this job is too big for one entity or organization, so it's going to take all of us to make this work. It's going to take all of us to make this work. I think I'm going to sum it up by saying this, three things. Number one, you've heard the situation. You know, we had a blighted city, particularly here in Detroit. The mayor's come with something he says is going to be blight to beauty. That's the ultimate goal in this overall situation. The second thing is our behavior. The behavior that's taking place is that we got all the citizenry here in Detroit and around these United States to actually work on planting trees. That's so important. And the outcome is going to be just what the senator had talked about. She talked about planting trees, addressing climate change, putting people to work, and beautifying the city. That's amazing. Think about those things right there. It's pretty simple. Situation, behavior, and outcome. If we do those things, it'll work. But I do want to say, as Jad stated, the Forest Service, USDA, is no stranger to working in this city. I think we started working in projects early 15 and before then. But more importantly, Senator, want to make sure that in June, we brought $485,000 to this city. So thank you for the efforts that you've done. Can't thank Senator Stabenow enough. You just can't. I mean, you think about that. I mean, trying to usher through things in a situation like what she... You know, to usher through what she was able to do with others there is so important. 1.5, not million, $1.5 billion urban forestry. Come on, folks, let's give it up. Give it up to Senator, really. That's monumental. That is monumental. You know, and this is not her first rodeo for sure. First of all, she talked about the bill, the bipartisan infrastructure law. You got the IRA, Inflation Reduction Act. Think about it. I mean, you all have a hero here, right here, and she's my hero because I'm telling you, she told me, she urged me through the confirmation Senate. I am so appreciative of the work she's done. So promises made, promises kept. I'm here. I told you I was going to be here. So I'm here to carry out and do the work that we have together here. So again, we need to celebrate what we want to see more of because it's so important. And the end goal is going to be from blight to beauty. Mayor, I'm going to use that. I'm going to use that. I'm going to use that.
I trademarked.
But no, it makes sense. It makes sense. But again, thanks for the opportunity to be here. And I wouldn't have missed this for anything. And I'm so glad that Jad and Amanda worked it out. They had me going some other places, but if Senator Stabenow was going to be here, I made a promises. So if promises made, promises kept. Senator, I'm here.
That's right.
Thank you all. Thank you all very much.
Okay, one last thank you and two instructions. My last thank you is thank you to all of you. Thank you for being here today, being part of this, showing up. Some of you plan to come, some of you who just learned about this last minute. That's what it's going to take. All hands on deck all the time to make this effort a success. And so two more things that we're going to do. One is we're going to have a tree planting, and we're going to hear from some of the Greening of Detroit staff about the tree planting work that they do. And then we'll have a short media availability afterwards. So thanks so much, everyone.
Okay.
I think we're going to move
What
over.
are we doing?
Yeah, we're going
Thank you
to
so
we're going
much.
to come over here and
What would you like us to
learn and then plant. Exactly. Thank you again so much for this. We really appreciate it.
If everyone please take 2 steps back, just into the face of the tree. I can
And we'll roll it into the hole.
Man.
I'm sorry. I apologize. Did I get you? Our next important step is to make sure we're good and even. And that's where generally Tori will come in. So we'll see if they have the best eye. Tori will make sure, and if we need to lean in right, or left, or whatever, we'll put a little dirt underneath the ball. And get ready to go. So we'll kick a little dirt into the perimeter. Kind of get it, yeah, there you go. All right. The most important step step is, Mel, we want to show everybody, we uppercut the roping off the burlap and expose the wall. Look at the ropes. Generally, the burlap has been wound at the nursery, either with nails or staples, but it serves in a purpose, but we really want to take it off. And we can leave that all in the ground. It is biodegradable, and at least this portion of this. There's usually a metal casing around it.
No, I know. I will not complain. Not one bit.
Dignitaries would like to bury the tree, or at least just one shovel. Just one shovel. You get on the other side. Slow down, Senator. Slow down,
Oh, should we get everybody? Okay. Everybody gets a shovel in there.
Break the word. Okay.
All right.
Look up, Mr. Mayor. Everybody smile like you're back to leave. Now let's lift the dirt up just slow. Over towards the tree.
Cyrus, bend down a little bit.
If I can mention, this is our Detroit Conservation Corps adult training program that we run. This is cohort 54, so we're on our 54th cohort. These guys are working now, they graduated from cohort 50 and 51 and 52. But I'd like to give them a quick opportunity to talk about why this is important. So you want to get off with that? Sure.
I can speak for a lot of the guys. Some of us married back skills that we may not have had, but it gives us the opportunity to objectively, right, that's ability to have a job, subjectively, planting trees. It's a great metaphor for grassroots movement. I think we all buy into that. We feel proud. Jennifer and Mary. We do plant them a little faster. For me personally.
Not only has it been the opportunity to get back.
Well, that would be too.
And very proud and grateful is the word for me. And I'm happy to work here.
nursery in the city right now. So,
yeah, so it's just simple as being raised in Detroit. Back when the Farm Lot program was there, I've always been an urban farmer in the city. So tree equity and watching the city trees, the ash borer, things like that happen. I was a child in the city, and I used to ride down these shady streets in our shady parks. And so being a part of this with friends and family, with the Greenies like family, we're all like family, a melting pot in the city. And I think that's what's going to help out. Being able to give jobs, not only give jobs, but what he was saying, knowledge and education, and sharing different research opportunities to see how we can build organic matter along with the tree. I think we'll be key to create lots more jobs and research. So that's one of the main reasons I want to do this.
Can we get a group picture of all y'all? Can y'all move up? Even with the tree for me. Not behind the tree. Move on the other side of the tree. Mr. Mayor, can you find in?